What's good, YouTube? Cardfight King here. AQUA Life Baby, you already know. And finally, Star Vaders are back in the Cardfight Vanguard meta. Yes, guys, I'm extremely excited to be bringing you my Chaos Star Vader deck profile today. I can't tell you how happy I am to have completed this deck in such a short amount of time. You guys know my history of Chaos Breaker. He's one of my favorite units of all time, my favorite Link Joker unit, my first round draft pick, captain of the Aqua Force Space Division, Sea of Stars, and all that. You already know how it is. We got Chaos Universe here, got the new strides, we got the new support from set 5, we got the Chaos Universe sleeves. I pulled out my old mat from the trunk, and we're ready to go. Now, this is Sunday night, but I've been looking at Facebook and seeing everybody post about the ARGs, and this deck has been topping ARGs quite a bit. This deck is definitely one of the best decks in the meta. You can tell from the results. It even won an ARG as well, even though some people might discredit it. I'm like, look, a tournament's a tournament, and even though the turnout is small, it can be a glorified locals, whatever. A tournament's a tournament. It's been doing really well in those tournaments. So I'm very proud, that the deck has been able to transition well into the Stride format with its new support from GBT05. Now, this deck, I still don't believe this deck is one of those decks where you could just pick it up and play it like, everything's there for you, autopilot, blah, blah, blah. This deck, you still need to know the matchups. You need to have good resource management, because this deck definitely moves very, very fast with Striding, Chaos Breaker, and Zinc, for the unflipping and whatnot. But this deck is very, very good. I just can't say enough about this deck. So I'm too excited. Let's get into this deck profile. All right, guys. So starter is new. They got the new starter, Involution Star Vader Carbon. He's literally a colony maker for free. So if your opponent has a locked unit and you have a Star Vader Vanguard, you throw him into the soul, search your deck for a great one or less Star Vader card, call it to the rearguard circle, call it to any rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. Simple, great starter. You usually use him to combo into your Limit Break Enabler, so you can get off Chaos Bringer's Limit Break skill to ride Chaos Breaker, or to be able to use Chaos Breaker's skill and use Chaos Breaker's skill at the end of your opponent's turn when his unit unlocks if you did not hit him with a Volt Line. But we're going to get into that more, a little later on. But yeah, he's a very, very good card. Again, he's free. Some people run Dust Till Unicorn. I still think Dust Till Unicorn's a pretty decent card, but from what I've been testing, I feel a lot more comfortable running Carbon. He just adds a lot more toolboxing and utility to the deck. And then obviously you have 4 heal triggers. Gotta find them first. Here they are. 4 heal triggers, all Star Vader. My deck is all Star Vader, guys. There's nothing in this deck that doesn't have Star Vader in its name, outside of Big Crunch, obviously. But I'm more for consistency. Chaos Breaker has to Soul Blast Star Vaders, and I don't want to run the G Perfects, because if I do have to ride the G Perfects, that means that it's a dead card in my soul, and that's a resource that I cannot use. And I like to have access to all my resources. Plus, if I have to discard a Perfect Guard, if I'm ever in that situation and whatnot, I can't discard anything but a Star Vader. And Chaos Bringer. Chaos Bringer has to counterblast a Star Vader. So if I have non-Star Vaders in damage, then I won't be able to counterblast that card for him. I'd have to, hope that I have another card that is a Star Vader in my damage zone. So this deck is still archetype locked, and I like the consistency of just having Star Vaders, throughout the deck. And this deck does have the unflipping methods through Zinc and whatnot, so that's why I run all Star Vaders. Sorry for that little pause there. Running 12 crit. This crit right here is an amazing crit, Paradigm Shift Dragon. So what he does is pretty much if you have a Star Vader Vanguard, your opponent has a locked unit, you send him back into you call him to the rear guard, you send him back into the deck, and then you choose one of your opponent up to one of your opponent's units in the back row, lock it, and yeah, and this card gets shuffled back into your deck. Very, very good. It says up to 1, so when you're getting low on deck, which you do get games, because this deck is not one of those we're going to push hard and beat you face. This is more one of those grind decks, those advanced decks, and one of them longer drawn out type of game decks. And when your deck gets low, you can start throwing these guys in deck, if you save them, depending on how you need it to guard and whatnot. And it'll increase your chances to check him as a critical trigger drive check. So he's a very, very good card. Saves you late game. Great for making combo lock plays. He's a free back row lock, so anything free is always good. And then the rest is just crit triggers. Now, the reason why we're running 12 crits in this deck, again, guys, this deck is very, very fast in moving its cards, you know, out of the deck, you building advantage and whatnot through Chaos Breaker skill, through Striding, and through Zinc, and who we'll get to, who soul charges 2 from the deck. I'm not running a Legion in this deck, and I'll get to that when I get to the grade 3s. But again, this deck moves very, very fast. I was testing out draw triggers like I had it before in set 13, but you know, the way the format is right now, the deck moves its cards too fast for me to be running draw triggers, because I was running into problems where I was decking out, I was close to decking out, you know, certain situations I have enough hand and I don't want to check draw triggers, I want to start checking crit triggers. So that's the reason why I've, you know, changed to 12 crits, and it's been working out a lot better with 12 crits. All right, on to grade 1. All right, guys, so for grade 1, remember, all Star Vader, baby. Prometheum, he's the old school Star Vader Perfect Guard. He's just an old school PG. Again, like I said, there are games where you might have to ride your Perfect Guard, or you might G-assist into your Perfect Guard and things like that. And so you want to have a Star Vader in your soul for Chaos Breaker to Soul Blast. So, you know, it is what it is with that. Now I'm running 4 of this new card Zinc. I'm thinking about cutting her down to 3, but you know, I'm going to locals tomorrow, and I'm probably going to play this deck in my locals tournament. I haven't been to locals. I haven't played in a local tournament since my birthday in November. So, so what she does is if you have a chaos if you have a unit with chaos in its name as your Vanguard, and your opponent has a locked card, throw her into the soul charge 2, unflip 2. Very good, nice 7k booster. She's our unflipping power in this deck. Unflipping 2 damage is so good, but like I said, this deck does require good resource management. So before you're using her, make sure you learn, you can manage your counterblast pretty well with this deck. And when you use her skill. Like when I first put the deck together and was playing it, I was overusing her ability, so I was losing a booster and I was soul charging too much, and I kept finding myself, I decked out in a few games. I came close to decking out. I soul charge things I didn't really want to soul charge. I like to use her, mid game when I'm counterblast, just to refresh, because I don't really, if I'm shuffling back crit triggers and things into the deck like that, I don't want to, have to use her to soul charge and unflip and then, soul charge those crits I just sent back, paradigm shift. So there's just some things I'm working on with using this card. I'm trying to increase my skill with using this card. So yeah, but it's a very good card. I'm running her at 4 just because she's unflipping power. But the next card I'm thinking about bumping up to 4. Not this card. Charcoal is he's just a limit break enabler. Again, you get him out on your on your turn after you lock an opponent's unit, usually with Carbon if you don't already have him in hand, or with Colony Maker. He just unlocks your limit break, so you can use Chaos Bringer's limit break 4 skill to rewrite Chaos Breaker, and use Chaos Breaker's skill obviously when you're at 3 or less damage, so that you can Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and then restand and go into your turn. So yeah. And then 3 copies of Voltline. Voltline's a card I'm thinking about bumping to 4. This guy is so good. I thought that Prison Star Vader Palladium was pretty good, but he was using up too many counterblasts, and with him and Zinc, I was losing too many boosters by trying to balance using both of their abilities. But he is just so good. Like, so what he does is when an attack hits, that this hits a Vanguard. Remember, guys, a Vanguard. During the battle that this unit boosted, you choose one of your opponent's lock cards and you Omega Lock it. So he Omega Locks a card if you hit an opponent's Vanguard when he's boosting. Very good card. I like to put him behind my Vanguard in certain times, like, early game when they're going to take a damage. When it's like, yeah, they're going to take a damage, and I can just sit there and get a nice Omega Lock off. Sometimes I'll call it to the rear guard circle. Depending on if I know they have like a perfect guard in hand, I know my Vanguard's going to get perfect guarded, then I'll probably put him on the rear guard circle and then put my opponent in position where it's like, okay, either you're going to perfect guard my Vanguard and then, depending on my trigger checks, take this next attack or drop a lot of shield for this next attack that's going to Omega Lock your unit, or or you're just going to take my Vanguard attack so that you can block this column that has the Omega Lock. So it depends, you know, obviously I'm watching my opponent drive checks is one of the things I always tell us that we always need to work on is watching our opponent's drive checks. And, you know, so it's one of those things I've been working on, you know, with his placement. So his placement is really kind of like dependent on how you want to bait your opponent into guarding. So that's pretty much it on him. Very good card. I love him. He's been putting on a lot of pressure. People do not like to let him hit, and he's just there to force out cards out of their hand, really. And if he does hit, we get that Omega Lock, then that's even better for us. All right, on to grade 2. All right, guys. So for grade 2, get some staples out of the way. 4 copies of Photon. Photon to me is kind of like the Tidal Assault for Link Jokers. At least for Star Vader. If you have a Star Vader Vanguard and your opponent has a locked unit, when you call him to the rear guard circle, choose another one of your opponent's units and lock it. He's a free lock. And he's a 9K, and he's a free lock. He's just a staple in this deck at 4. He is too good of a card, too good of a unit. You know, having those free locks, you know, helps you with your counter blasting and things like that. He's just an amazing card. Then 4 of the new card, some new Chaos support. Disorder Star Vader Iron. He's a very good card. So what he does is when as long as you have a Chaos unit as your Vanguard, he's an 11K attacker. So he's one of those, archetype type of cards. So glad Bushiroad made Chaos into like an archetype. So happy about that. So what he does is when you call him to the rear guard circle, if your opponent has a locked unit, and you have a Chaos as your Vanguard, I believe it's Chaos as your Vanguard. Yep, as Chaos in your Vanguard name, then you get to choose one of your opponent's units and lock it. Very good card. He's pretty much a counter blasting Photon, but he gains 2K when he's attacked. Very good for making good columns. Amazing. He's the type of card that I do not want to ride against brawlers, because that's pretty much what I play a good majority of the time, because that's my brother's main deck. But against decks that are cross riding and things like that, he's great. He's a card that you want to get on the board as early and often and have a 7K booster so you can make an 18K column, so you can put some good numbers on cross-ridden Vanguards. That's one of the benefits I like of these 11K type Vanguards, is it gives us options so that we can fight against cross-rides, and brawlers are part of the meta, and there's something that you're going to have to deal with. So great card to have for that. And then we have 3 copies of Colony Maker. Colony Maker is a really good card. I don't run her at 4 because, again, this deck does go through its cards very fast with the drawing and whatnot. And, Carbon is there to toolbox. So Carbon is like my 4th Colony Maker. So what she does is literally when you call her to the field, if you have a Star Vader Vanguard and your opponent has a locked unit, counterblast 1, search your deck for a grade 1 or less Star Vader, call it to any rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. Very, very good card. I like to get her and see her early games to set up my board. She's kind of like the Link Joker's version of Sword Me, so to speak. Getting our cards out. So she gets out our utility cards, puts our Volt line behind a rearguard or Vanguard, gets our Limit Break Enabler out, brings out a Zinc if we need to unflip, then use her as a poke column or call something out to put some pressure on the Vanguard. She's just a very, very good card. She can even call out Paradigm Shift if we want to get another if we need to get another lock in. So and that's probably one of those things you'd probably do in a dark irregular matchup, if during the thruster is now already locked. All right, and on to grade 3. All right, guys, so for grade 3 we have 4 copies of Star Vader Chaos Bringer. Now, the reason why I'm not running the Legion in this deck, guys, is because I'm going for accuracy. When all these Chaos support cards, Zinc needs a unit with Chaos in its name. Iron, I need to have Chaos in his name for me to use both of his abilities. Chaos Universe has to have a Chaos Heart. I want accuracy. I want to be able to attune to the accuracy of what I need to do for my plays to get things done. And I've seen videos of some Japanese players playing Zodiac. I've seen people on YouTube recently playing Garnet Star and things like that. They're sitting there stuck on those units. Well, you can't. After those turns, if you're still stuck on those units, you can't go into Universe. You can't use Iron. You can't use Zinc. So you're pretty much stuck on there playing more of a vanilla type game. And you can go into Big Crunch or Judgment Messiah, whatever the case may be, whatever you need to do, but you get stuck for a turn, because it's not the Vanguard that you need to be on. It's not the Vanguard whose name your deck is centered around. This deck is centered around the Chaos name, and yes, decking out can be a problem, but you got to put the brakes somewhere. You got to, improve the deck, and this deck is built for long term games. It can't survive too long because it does move fast, but I'm going for accuracy. That's what I'm trying to point out. I'm going for accuracy and getting off my unit's ability. So what Chaosbringer does is, he's a unit I don't want to sit on. For goodness sakes, you don't want to really sit on him. So what he does is, at Limit Break 4, you counterblast 1 at the beginning of your opponent's main phase. And if your opponent has 2 or more locked units, you can counterblast 1, search your deck for Chaosbreaker Dragon, and ride it as stand. Very good limit break effect. Awesome card, which is why we like to use Carbon or Colony Maker to get that limit breaking neighbor on the field early, especially if we have to ride him so that we can go into Chaosbreaker. Oh, excuse me. And then we have his on-ride skill. So what he does is when you ride, you counterblast a Starvader, choose an opponent's unit in the back row and lock it. So he's like a cheaper Nebula Lord, except he's only on ride, so you only get that once. But sometimes he's actually good as a first ride, even if you have Chaosbreaker in your hand. Sometimes he's good as a first ride, so you don't have to use Chaosbreaker's skill to ditch a card and unlock it. You can keep the card in your hand, get off a lock for just counterblasting a Starvader, and then you have the limit break enabled. Then you continue on your plays from there. Obviously, it is matchup dependent. Decks like Gear Chronicle that will spin away that thing and blah blah blah, which could present a problem. But he's still a decent backup card. He has Chaos in his name, so you can use him with Universe and all the other effects. But he's cool, and I love his flavor text. I'm gonna do a video on flavor text because the flavor text of these cards are just hilarious. And then 4 of my favorite Link Joker card, first round draft pick right here, baby. Chaosbreaker Dragon. No, I don't have the secret one. I don't really care about rarity. I care about the card effect. Your higher rarity does the exact same shit as mine does. Okay. Now, so what he does is Limit Break 4. You Soul Blast a card with Starvader's card name. When a unit becomes unlocked, you Soul Blast a Starvader, you destroy that unit, and you draw a card. Now, this effect does not target. So if you do lock something, let's just say a resist unit that you help Big Crunch unlocked, that unit is not on the board. That unit is not getting targeted by the ability, so you can destroy it, even if it's just one unit unlocking. It has to be a resist unit. It does do that. I saw the ruling with Skiros. With Skiros, yes, your front row does get resist, but when your unit unlocks in the front row, it does not gain the resist ability if I'm using Chaosbreaker skill, because it does not target. And so it gets around the resist ability. Very, very good. And so his regular ability is just act. You counterblast 1, choose a card with Starvader's card name and discard it. Choose an opponent's unit units on their board and lock it. Very good skill. He's one of the he's the original. To me, he's like one of the OG original masters of control. Very, very good card. My favorite card. I'm so happy that he got support. My Dark Joker is back. Love him. All right, let's get into the Stride deck. Oh, and one more thing. We're in the Stride meta now. Now, back when I played this deck in the Limit Break format and Stride format obviously are different. But when let's just say we have a full field of control. Well, we have a full board of control. Our opponent's only swinging from a Vanguard column. Back in the old days, they'd be swinging for like 11 or 13, and we could throw down 2 cards for a 2 to pass, 2 cards for a no pass, 1 card for a 2 to pass, things of that nature. But nowadays with Legion and with striding and whatnot, people's numbers are 21k and above. So, it's not as freely defensive as it was back then when numbers were lower and we were just twin driving. Now we're triple driving at higher power. So you will be decks like Brawlers, who generally work off of a center column, definitely present a tough matchup for this deck, despite the control that we put on them. Like I said, I play against Brawlers. They go into Legion, they go into Turbo. Let's say you have a full board and you've controlled their board to the fullest, but they can go into Turbo, hit all 6 of your units for like 31 41k or something like that. And then, you know, though you built up some nice advantage, you then have to recall out that advantage you built up in your hand to the board and try to make some good numbers to hit on their cross ride, or just to hit on their Vanguard. And then if, you know, they have a grade 3 or they have another turbo, they can do it again. You know, my field's been wiped multiple times, and sometimes it is a struggle to rebuild your field. So guys, against decks that are more Vanguard centric, center column, that can work off a center column, definitely be careful of those decks and prepare accordingly. And the Stride deck. All right, so the Stride deck, these 4 cards are a work in progress. Right now I'm running 4 copies of Nebula Dragon, Big Crunch Dragon. So what he does is you counterblast, you know, when you're at GB2, you counterblast 1, Persona Flip, and Omega Lock an entire column. Pretty standard. He's not really a finisher. You know, it's okay. It's kind of What I want to do with this lineup is I don't have my Amnesty Messiah on me right now, but like I wanted to change up to like an Amnesty Messiah and a Judgment Messiah. Judgment Messiah, I'm not a big fan of that card because it only locks a back row card if it hits. But I will still, you know, just, you know, him just using as a stride unit, so I'm not sitting there on 11k if I don't have a booster and blah blah blah. But I do want to change it up a little bit because he has a GB2 stride. So sometimes if Universe is not the optimal play at the time, you know, and you know, you can't go into Big Crunch really. I do want another unit that I can, you know, feel comfortable with striding into and still get off a decent amount of pressure. So an Amnesty, obviously, I want to try, you know, getting him for the mirror match of some sorts. So yeah, but right now for Big Crunch, I got this line from my boy, I Am Vanguard. You know, it's been working out pretty nicely, you know, universing first. Sometimes I've had to resort to using Chaos Breaker's ability, over striding, but, you know, striding ain't always you know, you don't always have to stride every single turn to win the game. You know, you can execute an alternative game plan. You know, you got to have that in your mind too. And then obviously my favorite stride in Link Joker, Chaos Universe. This guy is a beast. He is the card that everybody wants to get out of this set. If you're playing Link Jokers, you're playing he is the amazing card. His flavor text is absolutely crazy. His flavor text is like, and so the clown said, game over. But yeah, so what he does, guys, is when you stride on him, he's just an active ability. You counterblast 1, and you Persona Flip, and your opponent you choose an open rearguard circle, and your opponent chooses a card from their hand and calls it down in lock position. Obviously, you know, they got to show you the card, and cards on the board are public knowledge, so you can see what card that they called locked. So that's pretty good. Against Great Natures, you know, you can retire their Legion Mate, but then the Legion Mate will get its ability to search itself, and they can, you know, get a free loop off. So definitely be careful of that. But yeah, very good card. Takes an opponent, takes a potential shield out of the opponent's hand and forces them to call it to the board in anywhere. So if they're not playing, so he pretty much makes your opponent pay for not playing any rear guards for Chaos Breaker to play with, to lock. You know, he's a joker, blah blah blah. And then his other ability is at GB3, if you have a unit with Chaos in its name and its heart, then choose another unit on your opponent's field and lock it. So if you do use him as your second stride, then, you know, you'll call something locks, and then you can lock another card for free. Very good card, guys. He is an amazing card. He's what makes sense. He's usually, a lot of times, he's usually your first stride, and then you start going into more tempo striding, or, you know, you'll pressure with your Vanguard column with, you know, your twin drive and whatnot. He's just an amazing card, whether you use him as your first stride, your second stride, whenever you use him. He's a very, very good card. If I play against this deck, I do like to try and play around Universe. I like to, for my opponent I want to get his Universes out of the way, you know, try, you know, outlast him a bit, get his Universes out of the way, and then start, you know, doing other things with my game plan. But that's just another story for another day. Yeah, very good card, guys. Very, very happy about this. So that's going to be the deck profile, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I know it's long, but you guys know I like to give you guys information about how I think on a competitive level about the usages of these cards versus other things and whatnot. I will be bringing you my brother's Brawler deck next. That's the deck that this deck definitely has a lot of trouble with because it can work off a center comm. So expect that deck profile next. I'll be taking this to locals tomorrow, and I'll probably play this deck at locals tomorrow. So I'll probably give you guys a turn report of how I did. And yeah, it's the Cardfight King. We out. Chaos Breaker. Chaos Universe. We're out.